Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo 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 Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Reading this morning, Canto 3, Chapter 24, Text 37. It's on the screen? Yes? Esha Atma Pato Vyakto. Not yet. There it is. Esha Atma Pato Vyakto. Nashta Kalena Bhuyasa. Tam Pravartayatam Deham. Imam Vidhi Mayabritam. Esha Atma Pato Vyakto. Nashta Kalena Bhuyasa. Tam Pravartayatam Deham. Imam Vidhi Mayabritam. Someone wants to chant? Esha Atma Pato Vyakto. Nashta Kalena Bhuyasa.
Tam pravartayatam deham. Imam vidhi maya vritam.
Eshatma Pato Vyakto. Nashtakalena Bhuyasa. Tam Pravartayatum Deham. Imam Vidhi Mayabritam.
Translation: this path of self-realization, which is difficult to understand, has now been lost in the course of time. Please know that I have assumed this body of Kapila to introduce and explain this philosophy to human society. Again, purport by Srila Prabhupada. It is not true that Sankhya philosophy is a new system of philosophy introduced by Kapila. As material philosophers introduce new kinds of mental speculative thought to supersede that of another philosopher. On the material platform, everyone, especially the mental speculator, tries to be more prominent than others. The field of activity of the speculators is the mind. There is no limit to the different ways in which one can agitate the mind. The mind can be unlimitedly agitated, and thus one can put forward an unlimited number of theories. Sankhya philosophy is not like that. It is not mental speculation. It is factual. But at the time of Kapila, it was lost. Paragraph. In due course of time, a particular type of knowledge may be lost, or may be covered for the time being. That is the nature of this material world. A similar statement was made by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. Sa kale neha mahata yogo nashta. In the course of time, the yoga system, as stated in Bhagavad Gita, was lost. It was coming in parampara, in disciplic succession, but due to the passage of time, it was lost. The time factor is so pressing that in the course of time, everything within this material world is spoiled or lost. The yoga system of Bhagavad Gita was lost before the meeting of Krishna and Arjuna. Therefore, Krishna again enunciated the same ancient yoga system to Arjuna, who could actually understand Bhagavad Gita. Similarly, Kapila also said that the system of Sankhya philosophy was not exactly being introduced by him. It was already current, but in the course of time it was mysteriously lost, and therefore he appeared to reintroduce it. That is the purpose of the incarnation of Godhead. Yada yada hi dharma shaglanir bhavati bharata. Dharma means the real occupation of the living entity. When there is a discrepancy in the eternal occupation of the living entity, the Lord comes and introduces the real occupation of life. Any so-called religious system that is not in the line of devotional service is called adharma samstapana. When people forget their eternal relationship with God and engage in something other than devotional service, their engagement is called irreligion. How can one get out of the miserable condition of material life is stated in Sankhya philosophy, and the Lord himself is explaining this sublime system. Now, there are strong statements here, and I just want to review some of them. One of those strong statements is that the system of knowledge was lost before Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita. Now, question, does that tally with the fact that there are 4 disciplic successions and that they're still intact? So how is Krishna saying that knowledge was lost and now he has to reestablish it with Arjuna? And for that matter, part 2, where's the disciplic succession? Krishna to Arjuna. Where is that existent today, or how does that work? One explanation is, as Krishna spoke this to the sun god Vivaswan, Vivaswan to Manu, Manu to Ikshvaku, that's a line of disciplic succession amongst the kings. And one could say that's disciplic succession number 5. And since that was broken, he's restoring that one which was broken. One might say that. At least, for sure, there are 4 disciplic successions that weren't broken at the time that Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. Because those 4 disciplic successions go back long before Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. The point I'm making is when these things are said, somebody, I've had it happen, some persons get confused. Wait a minute, it says this here and says that there, so how to reconcile? During the time of Arjuna, prior to Krishna speaking, I'm saying it again now, prior to Krishna speaking Bhagavad Gita, therefore primary disciplic successions that were existing on earth, and they weren't broken. How Krishna could have said, let me connect you to one of those 4. He didn't say that. That doesn't mean he couldn't have said that. But Krishna wanted to establish teachings directly to his devotee, Arjuna, because that line that he speaks of in Bhagavad Gita was broken over time. It's not to say that there weren't knowledgeable people many knowledgeable people during the time that Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita, but specifically the line of disciplic succession was broken. So where did those other people that are very learned get their knowledge? Well, learned people commonly get their knowledge from a learned person. They become students of a learned person. So where did those teachers of those learned persons get their knowledge? And you trace it back, and at least the transparent representation of what Krishna has spoken to the sun god Vivaswan, over a period of time that become deviated. There may very well have been lines of teachers that go back a long time. But the important point is the source of that long line of teachers. What is the source? If that source is Krishna himself, then that's a disciplic succession. But if somewhere along the line somebody had deviated, or going forward in time, someone deviates from the knowledge that's received from their teacher, and their teacher has received from their teacher who has received from Krishna, then that propagation of knowledge is not knowledge. That's what's being said in the purport. So going back to what's being said in the verse, Kapila Dev is making a statement. What I'm teaching is not something new. What I'm teaching is something that has been forgotten. This Sankhya system is very ancient. And explicitly, the previous verse and this verse, Kapila is saying, I've appeared in this world to teach Sankhya. This verse, it was present. It's not something new. It's been forgotten. So supposing persons either they don't know of that which is ancient, or B, it is currently, at least where they are, forgotten, but they want to give some teachings, because Brahmins like to give some teachings. So they may take some speculative teachings and propagate those, or create their own speculative teachings and propagate those, or a combination. Take something ancient and twist it and present their own ideas, which is very common. And so the purport is cautioning something that we all know. One should be very careful. And when one is being very careful, part of being very careful is we want to know what's the authority behind this. Not necessarily in a challenging spirit, but to preserve the integrity of disciplic succession. We want to know, we may want to know, we should want to know what's the authority behind this understanding. Prabhupada has taught us that in spiritual circles, that's standard. When one makes a statement, that statement is to be supported by Scripture. For example, the methodology Jiva Goswami deploys, he describes the methodology he's going to deploy in the beginning part of Tattva Sandarbha, for all of the Sandarbhas. And the methodology is, he makes a statement, some declaration, and like a lawyer building a case. He makes a statement. That's how it starts. And then immediately to support this statement comes scriptural reference, primarily Srimad Bhagavatam, and he states in the beginning, like scholarship does, these are the sources of pramana that I'm going to use in this paper or this PhD thesis or whatever. You lay it out for the reader, the reviewer of your PhD thesis or whatever you're doing. These are the sources of authority. So then, statement, the support immediately statement from Scripture. It may stop there. It may be more sources of Scripture, further embellishments on the principal statement, further scriptural support for those embellishments of the initial statement, and then anticipating that some persons are not going to agree. The Purva Paksha folks are going to say such and such, and to that, here's my statement, and here's the scriptures to support the statement. So the point is, not just, well, it's good scholarship, but it's also honesty, or keeping oneself in line with disciplic succession, is statements are drawn from Scripture. And the particular perspective on Scripture is also through disciplic succession. And that's what differentiates one disciplic succession from another, is the perspective on a particular topic of tattva, Krishna tattva, or whatever is the jiva tattva, whatever the topic is, truths about a particular topic, and then subsets. So when that's lost, it's a mess. And one of the ways it becomes a mess is that persons are not respectful of disciplic succession. They want to go off and create something, a speculative something, and draw attention to that speculative something, which means to draw attention to themselves. And some such persons may be very learned, and may be very charismatic, and may be very good at speech, and then there gets to be a following over there. And that lasts for some time, and then, things happen. Like modern philosophy classes. You study Aristotle and Plato, and you study, and then during their time they had a following, and you may have a modern people that have their liking for this philosophy or that philosopher, and it's perplexing, it's confusing, but it doesn't bring one closer to transcendental knowledge. They're not exactly claiming that they're going to give transcendental knowledge, but it's definitely not transcendental knowledge. The methodology that's being applied will not take one to transcendental knowledge. So one has to be careful. Being careful is good. In the statement, no, it's another point. In the statement of the verse, Kapila is saying, this is not something new, this is very ancient, but it was lost. I'm just reestablishing it, and I'm giving this to, he hasn't given it to Kardama Muni. Of all people, he's going to give to Kardama Muni's wife, or his mother. And his mother, says many humble things about herself, but at the same time, she's highly elevated and highly capable, and she asks nice questions after hearing his explanations, and more questions upon hearing those explanations. And the format of questions and answers is being followed in his presentation of Sankhya philosophy. Another point is Sankhya philosophy is often understood merely, this was mentioned yesterday, merely as a system of analysis of matter and spirit, and it stops there. The statement is being made here that it doesn't stop there. The purpose of the analysis, matter and spirit, is not just I belong to spirit, and then therefore Hum Brahmasmi. And over there is who I'm not, and over here is who I am, and that's who I am. I am Brahman. explicitly, Sankhya is to teach devotional service. Dharma means the real occupation of living entity when there is a discrepancy in the eternal occupation of living entity. The Lord comes to introduce the real occupation of life. Any so-called religious system that is not in the line of devotional service is called adharma. There's a particular sentence. Anyway, the particular sentence is the expression is, it's not, Sankhya is not just intellectual analysis. That's what comes in the unfolding of Sankhya philosophy taught to Devahuti, but the essence is to restore one's forgotten relationship with Krishna. But one of the ways to help restore the forgotten relationship with Krishna is to dismantle the misconception. It's one of the standard procedures of presenting truth. One of the standard procedures of, for example, in dealing with modern science. One of the standard procedures in dealing with modern science is the model of modern science is presented so that the listener understands that you understand the model. And then the next step is there's holes in that bucket. That model doesn't explain this, model doesn't explain that model doesn't explain the other thing. And look at this, there's so many holes in this bucket. Now that we've had very clear there's so many holes in this bucket, let's take a look at another model. Before presenting the Vedic model, it's valuable to indicate the holes. Now, in some cases, there are things that are beyond the senses. And so where the holes in the scientific model, it's hard to say because empiric evidence that contradicts the scientific model, I'm thinking specifically of astronomy, the structure of the universe, cosmology. And to some degree, for sure, to some degree, there's predictability, mathematical predictability in the picture that modern science has about cosmology. For example, not so long ago there was a full lunar eclipse, and down to the minute they were able to predict well in advance when that lunar eclipse would take place. So there's some value, some validity, something in that model. But the model is so different than the Vedic model. It doesn't mean that the holes in the bucket is they can't predict when a lunar eclipse is going to happen. There are things that the model does. But is it a factual statement of what cosmology is? Now, I'm not knowledgeable enough to go there and say anything more than that. I just had some exchange. Let's say a little bit more than that. I just had some exchange, correspondence with Antardweep Prabhu, the person in charge of the TOVP. And he lives with this. I mean, it's breakfast, lunch, and dinner for several decades. He lives with this. So there was a question that I couldn't even understand the question. Somebody wanted me to ask him a question, something to do with a statement from fifth canto, and how does it match this, the picture that we have of precession. So the picture we have of precession, as far as I understand it, is the earth is spinning like a top. And like a top, the axis will move around in a circle. And you can measure, you can predict the period of time that the axis will move because the earth is tilted and it's spinning, and a top will also have that movement. So it's precession. And that explains the earth, the relationship of earth with stars in the sky and all kinds of stuff. Well, the Vedic model doesn't have anything to do with the earth being tilted, and for that matter, even the earth spinning. So while that model can explain stuff, is it really how the universe is? If it's this, it's not that. If it's that, it's not this. The model can explain stuff. The model does explain stuff. But is that really what's happening? So what is the structure of the universe? So we stick by, because the knowledge of the Bhagavatam has an aparushaya source. We go with that one. And I'm not an aparushaya person, but the Vedas are from an aparushaya source, so we just accept it. It's not Vedic if it's not. So the model can explain stuff without going into it. The whole topic of science and the Vedas is interesting. I find it interesting. Because something has validity doesn't mean that something is universally valid. For example, microevolution and chemical evolution don't equal one another. That an organism can adapt itself to its environment and morph. Microevolution happens. Doesn't mean evolution. Life evolves from matter. No such thing. But it's extrapolated at evolution. It can be demonstrated this, and therefore the big picture. Life comes from combination of matter. It's just not so. Without the Purusha, Prakriti doesn't move. We don't have life without spirit. So life comes from life, not life comes from matter. Although microevolution has its place. So the bucket has holes in it is important. Just start with the fallibility of the source of knowledge itself. Imperfect senses, make mistakes, cheating tendency. So the source being fallible, the model is going to, by necessity, is also going to be fallible. While it can do things, it's useful to some extent. So, I'm going off on the science topic because Sankhya is very much appreciated by impersonalists and by scientists. They like. They don't like the God part. They like the combination of elements and make stuff. And then what's behind it, it depends on what your school is. For scientists, it's nothing, and for the impersonalists, it's Brahman. Impersonalists like. And atheistic scientists like. They like. It explains lots of things. The cause and the effect, the push and the pull of, that's science. The purpose behind it is lost. And at least here, what Kapila is saying is the science itself is lost. So he's appeared in this world to present that Sankhya teaching again afresh. After there's not a lot said about what Kapila Dev did after he spoke to Devahuti, but he lived a long life. We find some things, but he gave his teachings elsewhere, not just to Devahuti. But his teachings to Devahuti is what's recorded in the Bhagavatam. But he came into this world to give Sankhya, so it's not just a one-time Bhagavatam class to Devahuti, and then his appearance is finished and he disappears. It's just one portion of that picture. And one more time, the purpose of Sankhya, the essence of Sankhya, is to restore one's relationship with the personality of Godhead, or devotional service. Minus that, it's incomplete. Not wrong, just incomplete. Okay, see if there's some discussion. Hare Krishna. Go ahead, speak.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for the class. Few things startled me a little bit, so I wanted to ask a couple questions. But I'll ask one to start and then hand it off. The sampradayas, I guess in my limited thinking, I always sort of assumed that they originated, because if we read at the end of the Bhagavad Gita introduction, the kind of lineage, it seems to indicate that lineage sort of, the personalities during the age of Kali Yuga. But I guess I never thought about the sampradayas actually originating at the beginning of creation. And so...
Well, two things. Padma Purana is the source that says four sampradayas. It names them and the heads of them. So that's the scriptural authority behind four sampradayas. I mean, they're existent, but those are the ones mentioned in Padma Purana, so that's the scriptural authority behind them. And, at the beginning of creation, well, the Kumaras, there's details about the Kumaras receiving knowledge from Sankarshan, and etc. But so at least, very early in the creation, if not at the beginning of creation, very, very early. So because knowledge is meant to help fulfill the purpose of creation. So with creation comes the knowledge that the purpose of the creation can be served. So towards the beginning, if not at the very beginning. And they're existing throughout. Next.
So when and I know it's technical, but so when there's obviously, we have the kalpas, and there's a partial destructions.
Yes.
The sampradayas exist through those?
Yes. Yes. Now, the next question is, or how does that happen? One answer is, in the beginning of creation is each day of Brahma. The sub-creation, the partial sub-creation. And then each day of Brahma, then the sampradayas are established. Now, does that mean, if that's the picture, that Brahma has to hear Tene Brahma Hridaya Adi Kaviye every morning? And then the four Kumaras and Lord Shiva, they're manifest after Brahma, receives his knowledge and their creation. So it's a nice question. I'm trying to think of a scriptural authority that says, does it happen in each day of Brahma? The restoring of the disciplic succession. I can't think of any scriptural authority. It seems reasonable. Like, why not? Because up to the highest planetary systems, everything's finished. And he has to reconstruct those lower regions, and they need knowledge. So he manifests, the personality Godhead manifests the knowledge and disciplic succession by those similar, if not identical, methods. Each day of Brahma. And the goddess of fortune, of course, she's not annihilated, but how that becomes established. I'd have to go look. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wrote a book on the four sampradayas, their teachings, etc. Maybe it's in that book somewhere. I wouldn't be surprised, but I'm not aware of where the answer to this question at the beginning of each day. So at the beginning of each day, how does the goddess of fortune manifest her disciplic succession? I'll see if I can find out the answer from that book. I have a copy, a digital copy. Next. That's it? Okay. Go ahead. There's no one's jumping up and down.
So then, just continuing on the same line,
Okay.
We have the Brahma Madhava Sampradaya, so Madhavacharya,
Yes.
we have Nimbarka
Yes.
Swami, Vishnu Swami. In the prior yugas, are there another Acharya that's kind of propagating the Sampradayas underneath Lord Brahma, Rudra, Sanatan, and Sri Sampradaya? Because I think these are all some Acharyas here in the current era.
Again, I've not come across anything that's scripturally definitive. the principle may not be identical from one day to the next day. But the principle is the same, the details may not be the same. Disciplic succession in principle. The names may change, but the principle doesn't. It's more? That's it. Anyone else? Yes.
Maharaj, it's like unrelated to the topic. We hear that Kalia was sent by Anant Shesh to go live in the Yamuna because Garuda doesn't come there. I have come across in Brihad Bhagavatamrita saying Kamsa sent Kalia to kill Krishna. I was trying to
when things like this come up, minimally, and when you read carefully Brihad Bhagavatamrita like it sounds you're doing, you'll find in Sanatana Goswami's commentary, he explicitly says there are different days of Brahma where there's this variety, that variety, the other variety, the other variety, the other variety. So that's at least, an option, and it seems like the appropriate option in this case, because we know that the standard explanation given is not this one. Kamsa sent him. And Kaliya is a very unique personality, as we find in Brihad Bhagavatamrita. Krishna uses Kaliya as a conveyance to go from one place to another place. In Vaikuntha, he has a function in Vaikuntha or in Goloka. And he conveys Krishna from one place to another place. He serves Krishna. Like Garuda. He's compared to Garuda. So there's variegatedness. And from one day of Brahma to the next, and there's variegatedness from this world to the spiritual world. It's definitely unrelated to the topic, though. You have something?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Based on today's class, it was stated that we lost the Vedic knowledge. Kapilidev was telling it. And then in Bhagavad Gita also we heard Krishna saying it. Maybe I don't know. Are they lost multiple times and then they were again spoken, or they're only lost once and then?
Well, from time to time, not just once.
So basically from
Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata. From time to time.
Okay, got it. I have another question.
Okay.
And it's not related to this topic. I was hearing one of your class. I thought I would complete it next time, but I lost it. So this question is based on the word Kutilyata or Kautilyam. Kutilyata was the word where one should not have that feature. How to we get out of it was the word I vaguely remember.
Well, you got to get a little more information than what you just did, because no bells are ringing.
Okay, yeah, I'll try to find it. That's a word. The main description of the topic was person discussing about others when they have the free time always thinking of others. They did not do this. They something a person we should avoid. That kind of nature was mostly I heard.
No bells are ringing.
Okay, Maharaj. Thank you. I'll find.
Over here, anyone? Online?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So, where does the knowledge, that's outside of like these four sampradayas, like say other religions or other Vedic, other Vedic, practices, like where does they fit in like Vedic model, like?
Well, other geographic regions, the sampradayas can go all over the place. They're not geographic confined. And where other teachings are, there are persons who like this, and they teach this, and their take on this is whatever their take is. And then there's another group that saying this, but they have another take and they teach that. So the origin is the Vedas, and there's different, because these four sampradayas are connecting to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vaishnava sampradayas. But there may be other sampradayas that have a starting point. The starting point is someone that became, whatever, inspired by a particular message or portion or passage or something from the Vedas. And then comes a line.
So they will start like in between the line somewhere? Like
Well, the main, I think, besides chronology, the main thing for you and me is to understand they're not leading to the absolute truth. While it's, on the one hand, it's Vedic, and the purpose of the Vedas is clearly stated in Bhagavad Gita, is to know Krishna, but many people are interested in the Vedas and not interested in knowing Krishna. So when such persons develop a system of knowledge, and Brahmanas teach that system, and then followers follow that system. The origin, the root is the Vedas, without the purpose of the Vedas being connected. The purpose is to know Krishna, and the four sampradayas teach that. So the other ones are teaching something other than knowing Krishna. Is that
yeah.
okay?
Yes.
And in the course of history, someone, by being empowered by Krishna, comes up with a picture of the Vedas teach this, the Vedas teach that.
But still they are elevating, like, rather than following.
Indirectly.
Thank you.
You have something online? No? Okay. Prabhupada ki jai.